This was written for my son Andrew, and I think he was about 27 at the time. I performed it at the Sweet Chariot Festival on Swans Island in 2013, and he was born in 1987, so yeah, he would have been 26 or 27. And he had been expressing more interest in sailing, learning to sail. And I was making the point to him that the skills of sailing for what were one thing, but sailing was a whole culture, and there were certain stories and terms, vocabulary that you had to be familiar with if you were going to truly be a sailor. And so this starts out with two references. The first is from chapter 19 of Joshua Slocum's Sailing Alone Around the World, which was published in 1900. And Slocum had been given a goat. I think maybe he was on St. Helena, and the local people felt he must be lonely. So as he was about to cast off, they came down to the dock, and the mayor gave him a goat. Probably this was a goat that had been driving everybody crazy, and they wanted to get rid of it. But he had no choice but to accept the goat, and he cast off. And soon he realized that the goat was eating everything in sight. The goat ate his straw hat, his Panama hat that protected his eyes from the sun. It ate his navigation charts. It ate his slippers, and started eating the actual lines, the ropes that controlled the boat. And he was starting to wonder if he would get to the next port, which was Ascension Island, and he left the goat at Ascension Island. So that's a story that sailors tend to know about. The other reference is to Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, the English author, that was published in 1908, where Ratty says to Mole, "There is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats." That is one of the most famous lines in sailing nautical lore. So this poem is to encourage Andrew to learn the vocabulary of sailing. Completely tongue-in-cheek. "Me hearty lad, I know you yearn to mess about in boats. First, there are sailors' tales to learn, like Slocum and the goat. And while still safely at the dock, hark to the speech on boats, that you may talk as sailors talk on voyages remote. A cockpit is where the roosters spar, unless one sails a boat. Then that is where the humans are, a metaphor to note. To spar, they say, is just to fight, unless one sails a boat. A sprit spar keeps the gaff rig tight, a luffing antidote. A luff's a type of pulley fall, unless one sails a boat, where flapping canvas seems a call to tack or trim a mote. A tack is just a wee small nail, unless one sails a boat, and then the tiller will prevail if headwinds slack the throat. A throat connects a belly and head, unless one sails a boat. These terms refer to sails instead. Like body parts, they bloat. A great big pin is called a broach, unless one sails a boat, but veering windward spills the roach and broadside waves promote. A roach is just a burned-out joint, unless one sails a boat. It proves the bellying of a point of sail the winds denote. A shoe with spikes is called a cleat, unless one sails a boat, and then it will secure a sheet to hitching we devote. A sheet is fabric woven fine, unless one sails a boat, and then it means a trimming line, or what a cleat connotes. A tiller's made to break the earth, unless one sails a boat, and then it steers to widen berth as the rudder takes a pote. So much book learning to imbibe, unless one sails a boat. To steer away from sudden jibe cannot be taught by rote. To jibe, agree in all detail, unless one sails a boat. A jibing boom will jerk the sail, forbidding us to gloat. A boom, a loud and sudden sound, unless one sails a boat, and then the gooseneck swings it round until one's skull is smote. A goose's neck is stuck on fast, unless one sails a boat, and then it pivots on the mast, just as the breezes vote. And mast is acorn hulls galore, unless one sails a boat, then masts will bear you shore to shore, as sails and spars they tote. A hull is casing for a nut, unless one sails a boat, and then it shapes an absence, but it keeps the deck afloat. A painter is a hand who paints, unless one sails a boat. This meaning of a bowline ain't to give the deck a coat. A deck is just a pack of cards, unless one sails a boat. From stern to bow it's dry and hard, a drawbridge or a moat. And stern describes a glance severe, unless one sails a boat, and then the transom's in the rear as ham is on a shoat. A bow is bending towards the knees, unless one sails a boat, then it's the part that breasts the seas to make strong, stern men emote. A breast, a gland that maidens hide, unless one sails a boat, then it means sailing side by side. Off France, it's coat a coat. Avast! I'm running out of rhymes about the speech on boats. To beach a poem, there comes a time, or it must be rewrote. To turn to French in cheap recourse, to scheme a rhyme on boatin', leaves me in irons with remorse. My poesy est à peine hauten. So, bully boy, be sure before embarking on a boat, heed my words and learn the lore, this sailor slang I quote. Of course you wish to walk the talk, and step aboard this boat, but I inveigle you, talk the walk, for on you I do dote. You know, these verses are constructed in such a way that once I get started on this, unless one sails a boat trope, the second line is always the same. So the challenge becomes to find a word that rhymes with boat for the fourth line 28 times. I think there are 28 verses. So, you know, I use remote, note, antidote, moat, throat, bloat, promote. But towards the end, you know, I've tried to make a jest out of searching for rhymes, and that's why I turned to French to say côte à côte, and then I'm embarrassed because that seems to be reaching and pretentious, and so I try to back off from that. But I come down to for on you I do dote, speaking my attitude, affection for my son. So I recited this at the Oddfellows Hall on Swan's Island, and of course you're talking to an audience of sailing people, so they get all these little puns and rhymes and allusions, and it is remarkable how it's a world unto itself with its own vocabulary. And so they were building up. I mean, the laughter was just building and building, waiting for what the next ridiculous allusion or comparison was going to be, until I got to that line that said, a roach is just a burned out joint unless one sails a boat. A roach is a part of a sail structure if you're a sailor. And then they just burst out into outright laughter. But meanwhile, Andrew, who was pacing back and forth at the back of the hall after I had dedicated this recitation to him, was saying, "Stop, just stop." Like, stop. Like 20 verse, maybe 24 verses is enough already. Just stop. I was really embarrassing him.